2025 was a big year for us. We stepped back and had a hard look at what was important for blockchain. And so there's been less of the focus on crypto, the asset, and much more focus on crypto, the technology. And for us, that meant trading was top of mind. We need to move assets around the world at incredibly fast speeds. We need to make it globally accessible to everyone. We need to support the ability for money to flow freely. All those things are very important for decentralized technology and for consumer protection. And so we stepped back and said, what are we going to build in this space? And we said, Aptos becomes the global trading engine. From Libra and DM days, we started off as a global payments network and settlement network that could support billions of people around the world at scale, with predictable gas fees, and also incredible security through the Move language. In this generation now, we think that expanding on that vision from payments and free flow of money to trade free-flowing assets coming on chain is definitely the future. And we've spent a lot of time building out those product suites, including protection for MEV, bulk order trades, pure trading VM and Move, on-chain order book, and building kind of the first on-chain platform that can support trading at the speeds and experience of centralized exchanges, but also supporting the decentralized efforts and kind of even the CFTC, SEC guidance around having no centralized components going forward. And this is an area that is not easy, and I can understand why no one's done it before. The technical challenges are high. The expertise required is challenging to assemble. But we're kind of the first L1 to really position ourselves in a way where we believe that trading and trading infrastructure is going to take an important stage for the global mindshare. On the machine side, you mentioned,
Yes.
It's not just about trading infrastructure. It's about being able to coordinate resources. And coordination is another form of trading from a very high level. How do you take the $2 trillion of AI spend happening today over the next 2 years, mostly in NVIDIA GPUs, and support access to data and compute around the world? It's the problem that no one is solving today. Today's data centers and hyperscalers are all about trying to get you in their storage programs, allow them to have access to their GPUs, and keep you there so they can earn revenue, which makes sense from their business standpoint. They've built out high-speed networks. They've built out good storage infrastructure. They've built out AI infrastructure and compute that can be accessed from different data centers of the world they support. But one area they have not been able to kind of break through is a lot of this compute is coming through in different platforms. There are compute platforms around Latitude, Vultr. There are new inference platforms coming up. There are open source models that are being trained and fine-tuned, and also specialization around models as well. And how do you kind of bring all these infrastructures together into almost a global data center? That's a problem that's never been solved yet. And that's a problem that we think is very important to solve. And given our expertise in building distributed systems and building out systems that worked at scale at Facebook and also at Jump Crypto for their massive trading infrastructure, we think that we're well positioned to solve this problem. And so everything becomes a market in some sense. Data becomes a market, compute becomes a market. And how do you tie these pieces together so they can perform market services for any kind of infrastructure and enterprise around the world? That's the problem we're trying to solve, and we're very excited to solve it, Shelby.
Why did you feel like now is the time to sort of try to tackle these issues? Because you mentioned the Facebook days, you mentioned, Libra DM, but this wasn't necessarily the focus to start with. So why now?
Why now? I think the market for crypto, like I said, has changed a lot. It's gone from more of tokens, like crypto tokens are very exciting and speculative, to there's always this promise of utility. And the utility, we thought a long time, was around the focus lines of build great infrastructure, and you'll see amazing applications being built the same way you saw with AWS in the past. And over the last few years, we've seen that, we built out Aptos as this amazing, sub-second finality. We built out the lowest cost out there, most security Move. And I think we've had some great adoption in terms of the stablecoin usage, which has been growing even throughout this bear market. Amazing rates with USDT, USDC leading the way, showing the kind of benefits of that. But we aren't seeing as much adoption as quickly as we wanted to see it. And so in order to see that adoption happen, we got to move closer to the application layer. And so that's what we're doing with trading and with AI, markets and machines going forward to the future.
I know AI has been a pretty big focus of yours on a personal level for a very long time. Where does that come from?
I spent a lot of time. So this actually goes back a while. My my PhD was on supercomputing, and so at the time, the field was not as interesting. It was like an older field; it had been more established. Not a lot of people were getting into it. I liked it because I like scale and I like challenges. But after that, I went to work at Yahoo on web search for 4 years in data infrastructure at Facebook. After that, and all these technologies and played in machine learning, collaborative filtering, supervised learning, clustering, k-means clustering, that type of thing. But all those things, were less interesting until kind of the rise of transformers and LLMs, and now those fields are very interesting again to people. Where supercomputing technology, the ability to have very high-powered GPUs and CPUs in a cluster with high-speed interconnect, is now like the most important field in the world. In the world, all the spin is happening, and so the conferences I used to go to are now like fully packed with new technology and new applications going forward in the future. And so it's something that I think has been always interesting is about the applications. And for supercomputing applications, it was a lot about scientific applications around simulations of like protein folding, or like two black holes colliding, or even like where oil deposits might be in simulations around that. But now it's around how do you kind of build these neural networks, asynchronous computing, very very high speed training, and especially inference growing like 5x in the next couple of years is going to be a massive use case for GPUs, and probably the dominant spend of infra in the future. So it's something that I've definitely kept an eye on, and I know the company's been really focused on. We're using AI very heavily within Aptos across the stack. We're building not for developers anymore, we're building for machines and agents to integrate with the platform. One of the challenges with Move in the past has always been like, oh, there's a lot of EVM developers out there, not a lot of Move developers, right? And so how to kind of grow that ecosystem, the educational pipeline. That problem's been solved now. So Claude is the perfect example of how to understand Move at a machine level and then code against it. And machines will pick the best platform to get the job done in. They don't care about the marketing aspects. Sadly, this content is something they're probably not going to watch, and they're going to not care about who's got more interesting antics on the chain. What they care about is how do I get my job done most effectively, most efficiently, and safely, and scalably. And so that's something that Aptos is going to be best at, world class at, and we expect that the agent wave is going to actually support technologies like ours better than anybody else out there.
That's a good point, actually, because I feel like in the Web3 space in crypto so far, it's been a little bit more about whose narrative is being perceived the best and who's doing the best job at marketing, as opposed to actual performance, which is the case, to be fair, in most industries, right? But I never thought of it the way you just mentioned, which is machines go for performance regardless of mindshare, really.
That's right. I mean, I think AI is a great example of that. So people always ask, like, how do you compare crypto and AI together? Is AI like in kind of the crypto bubble of like 2021, for example, right? And I think the difference here is that you can't really fake like having great AI, right? Your AI model is either great or it's not great. Like, if OpenAI or ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude give me a great response, I don't really care about the brand name behind it. I care about the quality of the response, the quality of the content being delivered, the quality of decision making being delivered, and I've actually built many different tools to actually compare these products on a kind of lower level, and I think that's the thing that you can't really fake, right? But in blockchain, there hasn't been strong adoption and usage yet, and until that happens, the machines aren't going to pick the kind of best technology. The people are going to pick the best technology because they don't need it. But that days are changing. We're seeing here at Consensus, all of the institutions are coming in. They're seeing that this is the future. You saw the bullish announcement yesterday where they're able to kind of start doing a stock equity purchase directly on chain through a transfer agent. Through a transfer agent, sure, but that is all going to happen on chain very soon. And so, as this happens, the tech becomes very important again. What tech is going to be suitable for trillions of dollars of infrastructure and real-world assets on chain? We've seen this last month of April has been terrifying in many ways. All these hacks, 26 plus hacks, hundreds of millions of dollars being lost, and in many ways the crypto industry being exposed for not being ready from a product standpoint, from a tech standpoint. And that's something we've been saying is very important for many, many years. And I think finally now is the time in which that adoption is going to happen and the tech will be really measured as it should be.
I feel like every time there's a big hack happening or something extremely impactful in a negative way, it sets the industry back quite a bit, right? And with everything that happened the last month, I was just thinking, well, this is not going the right direction in order for the space to gain any sort of trust at scale. Do you feel like, at least for Aptos, the focus is we want to get a stack that's ready for institutional adoption? Or do you feel like it should be equally institutional and retail focused?
I think both institutions and retail require security of the network. Like that's something that is just, table stakes. And unfortunately, even those table stakes is something we haven't seen as prominently as we would expect to in the past. And now we're getting, the industry's being exposed for that. And, the rise of AI is the one that's causing it, because the security researchers, I put that in quotes because they're basically hackers, are the ones leveraging AI to do this damage. But it, in some sense, it also be a long-term benefit for all of us. As these systems harden, right? The good thing about them is they're open. As they harden and as they're tested, they will, eventually become even more reliable than centralized systems today, which are not going to be as well tested, which will not be as well scrutinized, which will not be audited as carefully as open source systems. Like the benefit of open source is that it's a system in which anybody can contribute, anybody can audit, anybody can see. And the transparency aspect over time will provide much stronger consumer protections. You don't have to ask, is your trade ever been front run? You can prove it with code. You don't have to ask, is the exchange solvent? You can prove it with code. You can prove it auditing, you can prove it AI. Like those things are going to be the strongest consumer protections we can have today. A lot of this is done by regulation, but the future is going to be around machines kind of guaranteeing that safety and security for us.
So do you feel like regulation will become less important?
I think regulation will be important in industries in which the consumers don't demand that. And it's actually a good front runner for making sure consumers get that protection. But I think over time, actually, those systems will become even safer than regulation allows because of the technology advances we're seeing with AI.
You talked a little bit about Shelby. You talked a little bit about Decibel to some degree, right? Speaking about trading and bringing this DEX that has a central exchange performance level.
Yeah.
Why did you feel like this is something that the market is going to need or want?
Again, this goes back to core blockchain. Why do people need blockchains at all? I think decentralized technology is very interesting from a technology standpoint, but the real use case of blockchains is to trade assets globally. It's the best technology for doing that around the world. Nothing matches up to it. We have the NASDAQ, we have the NYSE, we have London Stock Exchange, we have other exchanges out there. They do not support global markets for any asset around the world. And that's something blockchain can do incredibly well. And then the question is going to be, who can build best technology for that? I think we're very well suited to doing that, and we've done it so far in the past. We have a specialized trading engine. That's something required. You cannot achieve the same, the analogy I would give is you cannot, just take like a Toyota Camry and turn it into a Ferrari, right, for a specific purpose of racetrack. You can't just take a generic kind of warehouse and turn it into like a specific plant for building robots, right? Like you need to have a very specialized infrastructure for trading. And it's something that I think the industry has not totally caught on yet. They're doing piecemeal, but we've taken a fundamental look at our entire technology stack and said, what do we need to do to build out a global trading stack that supports the world's entire population to trade any asset at scale at any time, and also support markets around the world where a market pops up locally and globally at any time. And that's a fundamental different look at the way you think about, how do we exchange assets for people around the world.
So we mentioned Decibel. It has been a pretty strong focus of Aptos for the last year. Was launched on mainnet 2 months ago, did about 2 billion volume. So the numbers are looking decent. I feel like a lot of people would say or argue that it's not different enough from other DEXs on the market for it to have an impact at scale. How do you feel about that?
I think it's definitely early days, right? And I know people feel like, there's a billion perp DEXs being built today. And that is true, right? But I would say to build an on-chain perp DEX or say on-chain DEX in general, that is going to support kind of that speed and reliability and guarantees of like a centralized exchange and user experience is a massive challenge. And we have not, as an industry, solved that yet. We're in the early stages. And so Decibel in many ways is just getting its footing set. It's a brand new kind of novel engine, fully on chain. And for that, we want to make sure that there are a lot of safeguards put in place, that we understand the liquidation engine, that we understand how all the trades work. And we're getting a lot of great user feedback as people find, hey, I'd like to see this feature added. I'd like to see this. Why did this happen? Right, we're building out the Decibel MCP server specifically to answer those type of questions and allow people to make more interesting AI-based trades. And we're in the early stages, like I said. This isn't a long-term challenging product. Perps, just take perps for example. Perps are mostly around today crypto assets, some commodities, but they're not going to all the areas that we could be going to. And we have prediction markets like Kalshi and Polymarket that are taking on a lot of sports and politics. And people think of these as disparate and separate entities, but really what they are is, perps is a continuous market. It is a market that funding rate, gets updated in the case of Decibel every hour, but it could be every 8 hours in normal kind of centralized exchanges. Also, you have the ability for prediction markets to be kind of a one-time event, 0 or 1, at a particular stage, but kind of a dynamic market until then. And these are just really very similar intent-based trading. I believe that X is going to happen by this date. I believe that Y is going to happen by this date, or I believe it, generally directionally this is going to happen, and I want to kind of keep that trade open. All these things are going to flow together over time, and you can perpify anything, right? You can perpify the weather, you can perpify kind of cost of clothing, you can perpify compute costs, data costs, and I think that part of the industry, is something that has not been explored yet, and we're going to explore those spaces. But first, we need to get our bearings under us. Now, make sure we understand the core platform, which is very complex. It is tens of thousands of lines of move code, one of the largest move applications ever built, and we want to make sure that everything is safe for consumers out there. But the end state of this product is going to be, having every asset class that people want to trade happening on chain globally across the world, and providing kind of access to markets that don't even exist yet today. So I am very excited about the future of on-chain trading, and I'm almost certain that more than half of the volume of trading will happen on-chain eventually over time.
So what's you talked about the end state, which is kind of the next question I had for you. What is your hope, I guess I'm going to call it that, in a year from now and in 5 years from now for a product like Decibel?
I think it's going to move really fast.
Okay.
There's definitely interesting aspects of regulation which I think are helpful, like the work with Clarity, and even with the statements that are coming out by the government now around what they think about from a decentralized finance standpoint, how should trading happen in decentralized infrastructure, what are the requirements for U.S. interaction with those counterparties is very important. It helps to provide, even if it's going to be more restricted, a way for U.S. traders to get involved on a kind of a normal basis. And of course, international markets play by international rules, so that's different. But this kind of dichotomy of what we've seen with Kalshi, what we've seen in Polymarket will apply to DEXs as well. And that world will probably exist definitely a year from now. It'll be more defined, hopefully, and we'll see that continued adoption and I think transition where people will start to prefer decentralized venues because they have access to more assets, they have access to more leverage, they have access to global liquidity, which aren't as present in these centralized markets. And I think those over time will win in this space. But question on timeline, does it happen next year? Hard to say. My hope is always more toward more of that happening, but it's hard to predict how regulation changes and how adoption will follow after that.
I think it's always interesting when people speak about Kalshi and Polymarket because obviously these are arguably the two most successful consumer products that has ever been built on chain. But I feel like
kind of on chain.
Yeah, sort of using on chain components.
Partially on chain.
Partially, yes. Yeah. I mean, does any consumer product need to be fully on chain? That's a whole different conversations, but my opinion, probably not. Anyways, whole different question, right? But so my point being, people mention these two a lot, and I feel like people tend to forget that these are products that were built in 2017, 2018, a very long time ago, and then we started to hear about them in 2022, 2023. So it took a very long time for them to actually be arguably successful and for people to recognize and to start to use it, right? People kind of talk about it as if it's an overnight success. I feel like very few teams and products stick to a vision long enough for the same success story to happen. What do you think is the secret to bringing a product to market successfully, whether or not the public reacts to it positively as of right now?
It's a great point. I think conviction is really important in our space, and not just jumping from narrative to narrative to narrative. We've always believed high-performance blockchains are very important. We've obviously refined that with trading and said, specifically in the high-performance space, trading is actually the key. And that kind of philosophy has allowed us to build out, both Decibel and Shelby going forward. I think understanding why you're doing what you're doing and what the purpose use case for this is very important. And instead of building, hey, in general, I think this is going to be X, Y, this technology is great. Having that use case is very, very important for it. And because that conviction will take you through those hard times, right? I am certain on-chain trading will be the future of the industry. I have no doubt about that. There's a question about time frame, for sure. There's a question about regulation, for sure. But there's no doubt in my mind that on-chain trading will be the direction where the trading volume happens in the future. And I also have no doubt that the ability to tie together resources for AI and solving this problem of capacity is a problem that's existed for ever since I've been working in general in software industry. It's never not been a challenge. That challenge has to be solved at some point in time, because you're leaving, if you have spending $2 trillion of money on compute in the next 2 years, only using 600 billion and leaving 1.4 trillion idle is just crazy talk. That's insane. It's got to be used effectively, and we have to solve that problem going forward in the future.
So that's what Aptos is doing.
That's what Shelby's doing.
Aptos will with the Shelby product.
That's right.
Through the Shelby product.
Aptos is providing the infrastructure for it, and Aptos is the only one that could support that. And so, that's the thesis bet, and we are excited to push that forward.
So, do you think the reason why it's never been done, I guess, successfully before, is because most, or if not all, other chains don't have the performance capacities for it to be successful?
I think that's a part of it, but I think that the other thing is that you need to kind of have a thesis in this space. And I don't think anyone's come down to this thesis and said, this is a really important problem to solve. And if it's an important problem to solve, then you'd work on it. But if you don't believe it's an important problem, you won't work on it. So we believe very strongly this problem is very important to solve, and we're spending our time and resources and energy to solve it. It's a hard problem. It's not easy. But once you kind of believe in this problem worth solving and you think that there's an important consumer demand for it over time, I think there's a strong conviction to get these things done.
Who's the demand coming from?
The demand will come from the need for this platform. Our customers are demanding it. We already have signed customer commitments for Shelby. And the reason is because, say you're doing data collection, if you're trying to study audio clips, or creating audio clips that are going to support kind of training for models, or you're watching video that's going to support how we operate a podcast. If someone wants to do like AI generated podcast, and someone's take this clip and put it on as a data collection artifact, that's another interesting challenge, right? So these kind of things are already necessary for our customers. And they're just saying, where do I find the most effective way to store and then compute on this data later on after the fact? I can do it in a hyperscaler. It's going to cost me X. It's going to be a huge part of my OpEx costs. I can do it on Shelby, which is going to be cheaper, more effective, also support a global like a global infrastructure, and I can read that data anywhere around the world at low cost and not have to worry about these egress fees. I can compute the data on any infrastructure in the world and not have to pay higher compute costs from hyperscalers. Those are wins. And so those are the consumers, the enterprises of the world that are going to be building out AI platforms, products, the crypto customers who are starting to think about beyond blockchain. Blockchain is not good for general purpose compute and for storage. It is very expensive. You're going to pay, if I do my compute, if I have $100 in the network, I'm doing my computation 100 times. That's 100 times the cost, at least. If I'm storing on $100, it's 100 times the cost. That doesn't make sense. So from an economics perspective, from a business perspective, it makes only sense to use something like a Shelby for those type of use cases as opposed to trying to do it on a blockchain. And so we're very excited about solving these consumer challenges for those companies going forward in the future.
What do you think, as of right now, the timeline for a product like Shelby to be adopted is?
It's very fast because the need is now. AI data collection problems are now. AI generation is now. Inference is now. LLM, models and chat agents is now, right? So it's actually a constraint on how fast can we build to get this product to market, and as opposed to is the market ready for it?
So you think the increase of AI use is increasing the need for a product like Shelby?
Absolutely. Absolutely. AI is the number one dominant consumer of cloud compute today. I would estimate probably well over 90% of the cloud infrastructure is being spent on AI.
See, that's good to know, because I feel like it's a new way of looking at it. Because when we spoke about Shelby the first time, which was during permissionless in June of 2025, I don't remember this is something that we really discussed, the correlation between AI adoption and a product like Shelby being needed.
I think AI was, obviously being built at that time, right? But at that time, even Claude wasn't as popular as it is today. Everyone was using ChatGPT, but Gemini's improved a lot. You've seen other LLMs, like the open source models, especially from Alibaba to DeepSeek to others, improving a ton. And this industry has grown. I don't know. It's hard to measure, but it's grown tremendously, obviously, since that time period. And Shelby is always been aiming towards the top kind of compute and data storage needs of all the infrastructure, and that is just happens to be AI today.
What I've seen is, and I'm gonna read it quite literally, Aptos, the full stack for markets and machines. We spoke a little bit about that already, but Aptos is the full stack for markets and machines. The next era of blockchain infrastructure will be defined by two high demand categories: institutional markets and autonomous systems moving at machine speed, and Aptos is built for both. It sounds great. It looks great on paper as well. It sounds very fancy. What does that actually mean, though?
So what it really means from a product and technical perspective is that Aptos, being the global trading engine, means you can trade anything, trade any asset around the world. And you can do this with a global exchange like Decibel. But it also means that when you think about it, the exchange of information, the exchange of compute services for capital, or storage services for capital, are all the same types of kind of low-level primitives. They benefit from the same technology stack. And so while it might seem a little strange that Aptos could do both kind of markets and machines together, compute market is a market. Data market is a market. And the ability to exchange the payment for reads, the ability to exchange payment for providing services for compute is also a market. And so having that ability, and even in the future, to think about the different kind of resources that are tradable. Today it's crypto assets, commodities, pre-IPO companies, maybe it's weather in the future, compute, I don't know, whatever. Anything can be purpified and traded in the future. But data will be one of the most important assets in the world of AI going forward. And that's why data collection is so important for companies like Scale AI. Those data sources need to be secured. The models can be as great as they can be. Without data, they're useless. And so we believe over time that the work that Shelby is doing to generate monetizable data, allow people to monetize the data over and over again through AI, will actually become a market that Decibel can trade on. And the underlying technology stack, being the global trading engine, can power all of trading, not just the market of kind of assets, but also the market of data.
I think you've spoken quite a bit about Aptos's tech stack, the different tools that are being developed in order for applications to be more performant. I think what a lot of people, including myself, would like to know is what's some of your opinions in the space as a whole. Not things that people want to hear, but how you actually feel about it. So something that you talked about that I'm actually glad is the space has not moved as quickly as we thought it was going to be, in terms of adoption mainly,
Yep.
right? There was a couple setbacks because of the different issues. Well, the thing is, one issue in Web3 or in crypto, in blockchains, whatever you want to call it, has a huge impact, right? That's why you can't afford to have these mistakes that lead to hacks and things
There's a
like
lot of
this.
capital on the blockchain. Yes.
Yes, exactly. That's being moved and that's unrecoverable.
Mm-hmm.
Because being permissionless is great, but it also means that you don't really have any way to recover from it, right? I guess one of my questions is, and I've had this conversation with quite a few people lately,
Yeah.
do you feel like the space is overvalued? And I'm talking about its actual dollar valuation. In terms of, sure, it has a lot of potential and promises, but if we look at what's actually being done today, and if you look at its valuation.
I would say the space is improperly valued, if that makes sense. I don't know
Okay.
it's overvalued, right? I think the value in blockchain today, okay, so this goes back to my point about crypto assets versus like crypto technology.
Mm.
I think the technology is tremendously undervalued as a whole. It says almost that the space is predicting no adoption going forward. But the other side of the world is like, the crypto, the asset is valued on the basis of essentially, who can generate an interesting narrative, who gets the mind share of retail, and that's all fine, and that exists elsewhere in the world. It doesn't exist just in crypto markets; it exists in traditional markets as well. But traditional markets also have revenue, they have profit, they have all these kind of things that are looked at. They have balance sheets, public disclosures, and in many ways, I think that's what some of the proposals around clarity are around disclosures, around activities, trying to move a little bit more towards that direction. So they're not valued I would say by and large, they're not valued as traditional assets. I think also they're not by and large valued as strong adoption in the future and usage. But I think over time that will change as we see that adoption usage happening in the next coming years. And as evidenced by the conference this week, I think people can see that institutions coming on board will actually move the lever forward a lot, because they are going to bring on billions and billions or trillions of dollars of capital. And when they do that, they'll be forced to make the technology a top priority, a first-class priority, because they're going to quickly realize that having those hacks will end their business. And if they do not find the right technology partners, if they do not find the right infrastructure, it just can't happen.
Who's another chain, layer 1, 2, whichever, that you feel like is, I want to say, like, doing a great job? Like, you look at them, and that can be on multiple fronts. It can be in terms of their tech stack, their products, their tools available. Who's another chain that you look at and you think they're doing the right thing?
That's a hard question.
Is
I mean,
it?
I think great can mean a lot of different things, right? Great from a narrative and market perspective, there's a bunch, right? I think great from a technology perspective, not so many. I'd say, and then great from kind of a philosophical design perspective. I think the one I can think of, the obvious one, is Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin has never changed. Bitcoin is the first. Bitcoin is also, it stands for something beyond like technology, if that makes sense. It's really about an ideal. How do you kind of build a monetary system outside of money? So for that's, I think, very inspirational, right? Obviously not the best technology out there. That one, of course, I think is something I always admire. I was like, I think OpenClaw and Ethereum are very similar in my mind.
Okay.
Ethereum showed like the promise of what smart contract language could do. Just like OpenClaw shows the promise of what kind of agent infrastructure can do. Neither are the technology, I think, that is going to take the industry forward into the future, right? You need to kind of build out systems and technology that are going to work at scale, and neither of those are going to work. But I think it showed the promise. So those are the ones I definitely have great appreciation for in different ways. But from a tech perspective, I think it's tough, just given I don't think anyone's doing the things that I think are important in the industry right now.
Anything else that you want to put out there as a message?
No, other than this week, I felt very encouraged. I think having so many different conversations with so many different parties that are really not just dipping their toes or trying to move full-fledged into this space, and maybe regulation is the only kind of pseudo blocker out there, is super encouraging. I find that to be very, very promising. And while we've been waiting a long time for the moment in which institutions can actually start to build products around this and enterprises can build products around this, it's fascinating and exciting. The other thing, of course, is that the rise of AI has been something that I think people don't understand how beneficial that is to crypto adoption. I mean, hiring these expensive developers for integrations for products can be reduced to the cost of a couple of tokens. That's a major transition that people don't really fully appreciate yet. And that means that crypto adoption by agents, by companies, by developers is going to happen at a 10x, 100x faster rate than it ever did in the past, and at a fraction of the cost. So the opportunity is massive, and it's more massive than it ever was today. It's true for not just for crypto, but every infrastructure product out there.
Yeah.
Agents can now integrate with anything.
It's true for crypto and other fields as well.
Other platforms, right? So anyone who built a service, built a platform, now any agent can integrate with them. But for crypto in particular, I'd say this is really beneficial because we've had that lack of adoption in the past.
Do you think we're going to see adoption increase a lot faster now, thanks to it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, AI is useful because it's useful. I mean, it's not like, AI is a buzzword and like no one uses it. AI is actually like something that everyone uses on a daily basis.
Very tangible. It's something that if you now would remove it from our daily lives, we would actually feel its impact.
Yeah, it's almost like electricity, right? So if Claude is down or OpenAI is like, what can I do today? I can't do any work, right? Like it's as if power's out or my internet's out or like something like that. It's a core part of our lives, and there's no removing it at this point.
Agreed. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alix.
Anytime.